Back to politics now. Recall that we told you that the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, says the National Assembly's proposal to move the 2027 general election to November 2026 could destabilize governance and push the country into a cycle of endless politicking. Now, to discuss this, we're joined by political analyst Jide Ojo to help us unpack the development. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you join us as well. So we want to find out, how might moving the election forward affect institutional stability as claimed by some of the lawmakers, particularly in sensitive areas like national security, like INEC readiness, which is a very pivotal part of the election, and intergovernmental coordination as well?
Well, I think the National Assembly is just they are just trying to experiment with different ideas, and the time is not there for them. Time is of essence. I take exception to all these attempts to ambush the electoral management body, to foist on them reforms that may not be feasible, at least in the interim, in the beginning of, in terms of preparation for 2027. In my column in the Punch today, I raised this issue of moving the election forward. They have not advanced their minds to issue around funding. As I speak with you, preparation is at advanced stage for the 2026 budget. If INEC will conduct election in November of 2026, it needs to have the entire gamut of electoral reform framework within which is going to plan that election. Election is not an ad hoc thing. You have to plan to the minutest details. And sometimes all the money in central bank will not make a difference if there's not timely release of funds. So I recall that in the 2023 election, INEC got the election fund over to two budget cycles, 2022 and 2023 budget. Now, if you are going to have election in 2026 November, that means you are relying solely on the 2026 budget. And INEC may need close to 400 to 500 billion naira to conduct this election. Can the federal government afford these huge sums at one go? That's one. Number two is also the perpetual campaign. Already, INEC raised concern a couple of months back about the premature campaign that has dominated the public space, where aspirants already have billboards all over. Now, just imagine that the election is going to be in November. That means the entire 2026, there won't be governance. And that also raises concern. There is a provision in the Electoral Act which says that INEC must give 1 year notice to the next election. So 1 year notice, if assuming that they pass this new legislation to have the election fast forward, it means that INEC must give notice of election in November of 2025 to meet that threshold of 1 year. All of this will just stampede the commission to commit a lot of blunders. So I do not support that. But beyond and above that, there is a merit in what the National Assembly is trying to, the lacuna is trying to cure, which is that let's have all the election petitions concluded before inauguration. But what they can do in this period is to allow election to hold in the first quarter of 2027 and then shift inauguration date maybe from May 29 to sometimes in October 2027, in which case, if the constitutional provision which says INEC must conduct election not earlier than 30 days and not later than 150 days to the expiration of the tenure of the incumbent, they will still meet that threshold of not earlier than 150 days and not later than 30 days. So there are a lot of legal encumbrances that will not make this proposition to fly. And I think the National Assembly need to just wrap up on electoral reform to give INEC sufficient time to plan for future elections. So I have urged them severally. Even about a month ago, I wrote in my column in the Punch, asking them to expedite action on constitutional and electoral reform, because INEC needs to roll out what is called election project plan. Election project plan is what we give, is like strategic plan for the election. What we tell them, okay, this is how much we need for the conduct of the election. This is how we will source it. These are the infrastructure that needs to be put in place, and all the other details. Assuming without considering, there's another major reform being considered, which is the reserve seat for Nigerian women. 74 seats to be added. Assuming that also says true, INEC must plan for those new constituencies, and it will have budgetary implications. So all I'm telling the National Assembly is that all these beautiful ideas, they need to really come off this euphoria, and just they have the liberty to hire consultants. Let their consultant tell them the practicality and feasibility of some of these reforms they want to bring on the eve of another election. This is why it is very important for them to have sufficiently expedite action on the reform. Then let the stakeholders and the umpire key into the implementation and look at what they will now need in terms of resources, manpower, time, funds to implement those reforms. That is my own position on this matter, my dear sister.
You have mentioned now it means that it required a lot more in-depth thinking before even that could have been proposed. So that is leading people to now speculate that this could probably be politically motivated. It could be a politically motivated maneuver, in terms of the rescheduling. What risks does this pose to public trust? Do you think that it's a politically motivated maneuver? And if it is, then what risk does it pose to public trust?
Of course, it's politically motivated. This is a proposal by politicians. So there's no two way about it. It's politically motivated, and they just want to do everything to their own advantage, which is why the opposition is crying out and saying, this is not the time, this is not going to fly. And in any event, like I said, it's going to affect institutional preparations, not just INEC, even the security agencies. Do you know how many billions that our security agencies will need to provide election security? Do you know how the judiciary will be clogged with matters arising from the party primaries, issues around nomination, which are pre-election matters? Our court will just be suffused with lots and lots of petitions that will distract civil and criminal cases that are already ongoing among in the judiciary. So this is going to impact, if it flies, and I don't see it fly anyway. I think this is just them flying kites, because if they really have thought through all of this, they will have known that it's not just INEC that prepares for election. There are also actors and critical stakeholders involved. I keep referring to my article in the Punch of today, which I titled "Amupit on INEC and the Challenge of Credible Elections," where I try to bring perspective of different stakeholders, how they need to work collaboratively to bring about credible elections. I just told you now, security agencies will need their own funding. They also will need time. Meanwhile, they are battling banditry and kidnapping and insurgency. So you have to draw them, plug them from wherever they are to come and provide the election security during campaigns. The judiciary also need, the civil society, the media, all of them will have to put in their own. So they are going to stampede every institutions concerned in election into this, if at all they continue to run with this. And I foresee a situation where they will even need constitutional alteration. This is not an issue that can just be dealt with Electoral Act amendment. It needs constitutional alteration, and I don't see it seeing the light of the day.
Okay, all right. Political analyst Jide Ojo, thank you so much for chipping in to this conversation and for your contribution. We appreciate your time with us on the news.